Well, well, well. Good morning. Can you hear me, pet? I don't think I can see the webcam chat this way. Oh. The YouTube chat. I think I'm going to need multiple monitors for this setup. Okay. Alright, screw it. I'm not going to try to make this perfect. I cannot see the YouTube stream chat right now because I've not figured out how to get that to work with OBS. But I have OBS running this morning, and that is progress. I also have T. And while T is not progress, it is the status quo. It is nonetheless what I need this morning. So I'm streaming from OBS, getting used to it. I'm on a really small portable monitor here. I'm thinking that I'm going to need to move to at least a full-size monitor and maybe two of them, which I can manage. I just am going to have to rearrange space here some more, but I can make this happen. I am streaming from OBS. That's cool. I have some graphics that I figured out, and I think that's cool. The problem is, for some reason, when this exported, even though I told it to not export the background and to do a transparent PNG, that does not seem to be working for some reason. And you know what? I will figure that out another time. I have said before, this stream is about just going ahead and getting stuff done, and I will figure the rest of that out as we go. So, if you are saying things on YouTube, I cannot see them right now. Let me see if I can load YouTube on my phone so I can see those. I do not have YouTube on my phone. Oh. All right. Well, Pet, you know how to get a hold of me in Discord. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into things. Yeah, I definitely gonna need a multi-monitor setup here for this. So what have I been up to? Well, today I have a ship's log going out for the resilience. If you're not signed up on Substack, you definitely need to. I don't have it ready yet, but in future videos, I will have a outro screen where we show, where to go and what to subscribe to and all that, and coordinate that with the captain. As you can see on my little project here, I've done some painting since we last talked, and I've decided to use this particular light brown for the woodwork of the building. I've not gotten around back here, and I definitely want to do something different for the tree. Maybe make it some sort of greeny color for contrast. This, I think, will be stone. This area here, I think, is going to be more like some sort of mud or plaster. I'm thinking maybe an off-white. But let's go ahead and keep painting trim. For this, I am using this old purveyor press. It's gotten covered up with paint, so I'm not sure what color that's named. But we're using this old purveyor press one. This bottle is ancient, but P3 paints work great with just a little bit of shaking if they've settled a bit. Writing-wise, what do I have going on? Well, rat catchers, of course. I've switched to a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule for it, 500 to 800 words a day. And this week, we get to meet a new species of creature that makes its home in Almadra, the city that the story takes place in. The Varani. The Varani are essentially lizard people. And the thugs, who we have discovered have taken the books that our heroes are searching for, are Varani. So they're going to a Varani neighborhood to try to find the books. And complications happen, of course. If anyone is curious about the voice for Smythe, I sometimes find myself, as I'm writing, speaking in my mind, and a voice sort of like Humphrey Bogart, but not the Humphrey Bogart we know from noir cinema, like The Maltese Falcon, but maybe a younger Humphrey Bogart. One not quite as world weary as the Sam Spade we meet in the movies. Although in reality, Smythe's voice would be probably a bit deeper and even more gravelly. And he's not really as world weary as he believes he is. He believes he's completely jaded to everything, and he has had, some rough parts in his life. But he's actually more naive than he thinks he is. And we get to see some action, some combat this week, which Youngji is very much looking forward to. She's been slightly bored by all the talking that Smythe is doing. If anyone's wondering mechanically how all this, sort of investigation Smythe is doing works within his character sheet, unfortunately, investigation is not really one of the strengths of the Pathfinder system. And a perfect world, I would give him levels in Smythe levels in Investigator, which is the really only investigation focused set of tools. So for now, he has levels in. He's decently skilled in the skill of society, which lets him move around and talk to people. He has some diplomacy, and it kind of works for those who aren't investigators. I do want to later pick up at least a couple of actual investigator levels for him through the archetype in order to represent that interest of his. Or at least experiences he's getting now. But yeah, Youngji is looking forward to some actual combat because she likes hitting things. She doesn't have a lot of experience yet hitting people, but she has some, and she is willing to learn. On the 3D print here, there's not a clear delineation, but this really should be, I think, a wooden structural piece here, not just blend into the plaster down below. And right now I'm doing rough blocking. It's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be. I'll go in and make things better later. But I want to get things pretty close to where the color will be later on, especially since I want to make sure that it actually looks the way I want it to look. And I can't do that without the major pieces being the right colors. I am also going to be starting up very soon on Tuesdays and Thursdays, an ongoing project for the Snuggery. I'm not going to publicly reveal that just yet, but because I want to get ahead on it some first and make sure I have some chapters ready to go, and I do not yet. But it's going to be fun, I think. I've made some references to it in the past, I believe. It's been a long-term, affectionate project of mine involving rewriting a classic piece of Edwardian erotica that's in the public domain now. Something I read in my formative years. Younger than I probably should have, but, sometimes you find stuff in your father's porn stash. I am not recommending that any minors actually do that. Parents, please lock your stuff up. Of course, in this day and age, I imagine most adults have that on Dropbox or something, not in a physical box of books they forget they during a move they put under their son's bed. Thanks, Dad. Yeah, as if I wasn't going to go looking through boxes of books. Get real. Although at the time, I really wasn't a reader, so it probably wasn't a danger. But him forgetting they were there was not wise on his part. Oh, I miss my dad. But we're not going to get maudlin here. It's just a part of my origin story. Everybody has an origin story. I know that it's trendy these days to talk about people as NPCs and side characters, but what the people talking about that stuff don't get, that especially the literary writers of the early 20th century really got, and part of what appealed them to me, is that they understood that everybody's a main character. Everybody, every person you pass in the street has stuff that going on in their life, has drama and amazing events. Everybody in the world is a main character. It's kind of overwhelming to think that, I know. So people want to think that other people are just there filling out their space. But it's not true. Everyone is a main character. Some of them we'd probably prefer not be. I can think of some political figures off the top of my head who I really wish were just deletable pixels. But no one is. We're all main characters. We all have our own stories. And that's part of what's beautiful about writing, is that even when you're telling a fictional story, you're in a way always telling your story, because you're telling something that came out of your mind. You're telling something that matters to you, and that always reflects you. And that's why I love reading also, because I like absorbing those from other people. Oh, and that makes me think about Pride Month. We are in Pride Month. I know that not everybody recognizes the importance of Pride Month, but I do. I think it's wonderful for representation. I'm old enough to remember when nobody made Pride Month merchandise or talked about it. But those are stories I love to hear. I love to hear stories. So I am so happy that these days there's so much LGBTQ representation and so many of their voices are out there telling their own stories. I think last year I recommended an Audible book about the history of Stonewall. And the title was Stonewall. I don't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but still, if you're not familiar with some of the history of LGBTQ representation, I encourage you to go out and do so. Whether it's a book on Audible or, checking out something from your library or reading a Wikipedia article. LGBTQ representation in non-Western countries is a topic we especially don't talk about a lot. And there's fascinating stuff about it in the history of Asia and Africa. Just absolutely fascinating. Not a topic that I'm well versed on, so I'm not going to try to educate anybody on it. But the little I do know is fascinating, and I want to learn more. Other things in the works. Well, I want to get back to doing some voice recording and podcasting. So I have a project I've been talking to Pet about that will be oriented towards women, but really anybody who likes my voice, I suppose. I've been told my voice is decent and relaxing, so I'm going to do bedtime stories. And I think I will enjoy that. And it will be a writing exercise as well, as I will be rewriting some classic stories, writing some original ones of my own. They will be short, 10-15 minute little things, except for some that may become multi-parters. It may include some affirmations for people. I think there's plenty of people out there that need to be reminded to drink their water and to de-stress at night and to let go of the problems in the world. For all of my problems with stress, sleeping is something I'm usually actually pretty good at. Usually. I have my bouts of insomnia like anyone, I suppose. How's this looking? I think this is starting to look pretty nice with the color blocking. It's really weird not being able to see the YouTube chat. Definitely something I'll have to improve on. Oh, I was just reminded that the book I recommended, Stonewall, is by Martin Duberman, and the post is on our Substack. Please come join our Substack. It is where I am trying to make a home. I am a refugee of Twitter and Threads and so many other things. I love the idea of social media. I love the idea of communicating and talking with people. But I am so burned out on the mega corporations that will leverage social interaction and information exchange to monetize and even weaponize it. I'm not saying Substack's perfect. Somebody out there can probably educate me on things that I'm not aware of that Substack does that are not good. But it seems like the least evil of the choices. And ethically speaking, this is where I've kind of landed these days, that I have to go with the least evil of choices. And I loved Twitter back in the day, but I'm not going to sit on Elon Musk's platform. And although his current feud with the orangutan is amusing me to no end. A man who shits himself in public versus a ketamine addict. And these two are shaping a public discourse. Dear God. Oh, by the way, if you are extremely right-wing conservative in a neoconservative way, you're probably not going to like listening to me. Feel free to just not attend these podcasts or streams. I leave politics mostly out of my writing just because I don't want to date it. But I don't have any issue with sharing my worldview. Because my world, it might have been different when I was a younger soul. When I was a young man, conservatives and liberals mostly agreed on principles. We disagreed on how things should happen, but we agreed on wanting a better America. I'm not sure that's true anymore. And to me, if you are willing to exclude so many people from your vision of the American dream, which at this point even includes, all of women, then I don't feel a moral or ethical obligation to try to find common ground with you. I just don't. And when you add fascism on top of that, my granddad, bless his soul, he was one of those quiet guys. He came back from the war. He never talked about it. He served in the Pacific. And, he stood up to me, for me. When I moved to Japan, my grandmother was appalled. And she was, a woman of her age. And she was appalled that I would go hang out with those, well, I'm not going to use the kind of language she would have used because it'd probably get me banned from YouTube. It's not language I approve of, but it is the kind of thing she said. And I remember when I went to move to Japan, my granddad, one of the very few times in his life he ever spoke up against her. Because normally, she definitely filled the role of the communicator. And he just sat there kind of passively. But on this one occasion, he spoke up and said, "Oh, let it go. Leto and his generation don't have anything to do with all that." And, that was kind of awesome of him. He was a good egg. And he was right. Time moves on. And in fact, later in my life, as I learned more about the history of wartime Japan, I found out that it was a pretty complicated issue internally in Japanese culture. For those who are interested, I really encourage you to read up on the history of the Japanese political parties pre-World War II, especially the conflicts between the Todoha and the Kodoha. which were the two major political parties, one of which was very pro-West. I mean, the wealthy in Japan sent their kids to places like Oxford and Princeton for education. And in fact, why am I not thinking of the term? Ambassador to the United States was one of those, and the military powers in Japan did not even inform him of the attack on Pearl Harbor coming because they were afraid he would tell the U.S. about it and turn traitor, essentially. And many Japanese who were sympathetic to the West and disagreed with the military policies of wartime Japan were sent out to work in mountain rice fields and essentially internment camps during the war, which is actually why we were able to have such a miraculous occupation of Japan and sort of reversal, because in a way we didn't really occupy Japan so much as we just pushed one native political party ahead of the other, and we had close allies there. Excuse me, tea break. Don't remember how I got on this topic, but this is called Paint and Ponder. And I just touched the wet paint in the front. Of course I did. Baka. All right, let's work on this a bit. I got onto this thread talking about writing projects and YouTube projects. So the unmentioned classic erotica one, and I know I took a pretty long digression off that. But again, to repeat myself, this is Paint and Ponder. And pondering involves some wandering, and not all those who wander are lost. But there's another podcast project upcoming. One I haven't even told Pet about yet. It's super secret. Super secret. So secret, I'm going to mention it here and say nothing about it. Okay, I will say something about it. It is going to be a limited run project. It will not have an indefinite number of episodes. I'm thinking, I'm currently leaning towards about 26 episodes. Half a year of weekly releases. And it will be one episode a week. I have to get it all written up first. Be about 15 minutes an episode, roughly. And it will be published by my pen name of Liam and take place in the Dayfall universe. Make sure I have this. So far, most of my podcasting interest topics have been more under myself, Leto, connected to things like the Snuggery, but this one will not. This will be a little bit of suspense and horror. Okay, so I guess I have told you something. And this is actually not a new project. This is something I started many years ago and did not get super far with because at the time I actually was starting the writing of The Pool Girl. And it ended up really taking off and being successful. So I did what any rational person does and switches gears and focused on it. But it's never left my mind, and I really want to get back to it. And I think it'll be fun. We also have some other works from me that are in first draft state and will come out at some point that I haven't really talked about, including a shifter erotica piece that I think is a little different from most of the shifter erotica on the market, and a slightly darker piece that may not go under Leto because it is a little darker. I don't know. I also worry about diluting names too much by putting stuff out under too many different pen names. I go back and forth philosophically on that point. Dun, dun, dun. I definitely need two monitors here so that I can see chat better. I'm also discovering, thanks to the angle of this camera, I can see angles I can't see from where I'm sitting to paint, which is actually pretty useful. I will need to remember that and take advantage of it. Alright. I'm getting kind of tired of painting the brown at this point. I may switch up and look for something to work on this tree with. The tree is enticing me. It is calling to me like a piece of an animate siren. Well, that wasn't an analogy I thought I was going to use today. Or a descriptive term. Yeah, I'm out of frame again. Hold on. There we go. That's better. And honestly, I should probably just set this down for a few minutes and let some of the paint dry. Because I have it in a lot of places now. But I want this last little bit of woodwork blocked in. It helps me visualize what I still need to make decisions on, especially this sort of stucco here. This is a fantasy piece, of course, but I'm imagining it kind of Jacobean era-ish. I say this with a distinct danger of having my ignorance in architecture show. I'm a fan of the Ben Aronovich Rivers of London books, and it is very obvious in reading those books that Ben Aronovich has learned, whether it is natural or because he learned it for the character of Peter Grant, knows a lot about architecture. And I always find myself, when he's doing descriptions of scenes, having to look stuff up, because it is not a field I know much about. Although I do know an incredible number of true crime stories involving architects. To the point where I've wondered if there is a trend towards psychopathy or sociopathy in them. I'm not getting into the specifics of what the actual clinical differences there are. I'm just being flippant and broad. I'm flippant a lot. So rat catchers, the classic erotica project, Liam podcast, my podcast. Am I forgetting any projects? These aren't all starting up at once, but will start up over the next few months. Let's find a green for this. Probably want a darker green. Something a greenish brown, perhaps, but not too close to the woodwork. Certainly we don't want this neon green, necro-type green. And of course I can mix something. Iolacin green. This is for the elves. This would be a really bright tree. Maybe too bright, but maybe if I mix it. I'm looking. I'll have to one day move the camera around so you can see my paint racks. My paint racks are right here. I don't have a lot of greens, to be honest. I don't do a lot of green painting. That's a decent green. This one's definitely the darker of the two. Let's do a little test sample with it, see how it looks. Alright, shake a. I probably should talk more about my upcoming works, but I never really know what to say. Oh, Pride Month. I was going to share this with you. I was asked the other day by somebody about attending Pride events in June, which, I mean, I think is a nice way to show support for the LGBTQ community. But I have to admit, I never feel much of an interest in doing so. But maybe not for the reason people would think. Let's get this paint open. I think that's fairly well mixed. I had the interesting experience of being in San Francisco for Pride some years ago, which already Pride Day in San Francisco is a pretty amazing event. But I was there for Pride Day, and it had only been a couple of days before that the U.S. Supreme Court had ruled gay marriage legal. And I'm just saying, it was amazing. It was a party through the city. The vibe was great. And the reason I don't feel a lot of compulsion about going to Pride events at this point is I am not sure anything could live up to that experience again. It was just amazing. I loved it. And I was so lucky to be there for that. That's very green. I'm not loving it. There are aspects of it I like, but I'm not loving it. So when in doubt, make your own color. That's the rule, folks. I do feel like it needs to be shaken up a little bit more. That was a little liquidy. Shake-a, shake-a, shake-a. We'll take some brown, that green and some brown. Now I need mixing stuff. Where are my little mixing trays? Hold on. Well, I'm not sure where my little mixing trays bowls are right now. If you can hear the dogs in the background, ignore them. They're just being cantankerous with each other, which they do sometimes. They're siblings, they fight. Okay, so I don't know where my little mixing bowls are. That's irksome. So we're just going to mix right here on the board. It's fine. It's fine. I want mostly the green. I don't want to wash that brush. So I'm going to grab another brush. A small brush. Come on. That's one of my nice sable brushes. I don't want to use it just for paint dipping. No. You've primarily seen me use just some cheap brushes here for blocking in. I do have some nice brushes that I use as well. Alright. I'm feeling very indecisive about what brush I want to use just for transferring some paint. I don't know why. Do you ever find yourself doing that? Here's a cheap, crappy brush. I'll use it. Just going to scoop some of this brown out. We're going to mix that in. Put some more brown in there, just because I think we need a little bit more paint to work with here. A bit more of the green. I want about a 2-to-1 green to brown ratio here. I want the green to show through, but I definitely want the brown color to pick up. And I actually don't mind here if the color is a little inconsistent and not mixed perfectly, because this isn't an organic thing we're doing. Alright, so let's give this a shot. Oh yeah, we can immediately see a significant difference there. And where there's a bit of difference, we'll just smooth it out and blend it together. Yeah, that's good. And we have notes of that brown that complement the wood, but the green is definitely more dominant, so we're getting the contrast. I think that's nice. I'm happy with that. Now somebody may ask, oh, but what happens when you have to come back and do touch-up and you don't have a stored vial of that exact color mix? I'll mix some more. I'll make it work. I'll do some blending where I need to for a transition. It'll be fine. It's a 2-to-1. I can eyeball it. And like I said, it's organic. You can find excuses for things. Painting, even painting a pre-created shape like this, should be a creative endeavor. You visualize things with your mind and you make them happen. I like it because it's very different from writing, and I love writing, but it's nice to do other things. And this is the sort of writing is something that takes my focus. I can't really engage with other things while I do it. While this, I can listen to books, I can talk to people like I'm doing now, I can watch movies. It just takes up a different part of my brain than the writing does. Maybe if I keep this up, I won't go senile. Although that has not run in my family, thank goodness. And by that I mean dementia. I do have family members that have had dementia, but they're not actually blood related to me. Yeah, I'm digging that green. If I could see my chat right now, I'd be like, hey, what do you think of that green? You love it? I love it. Now, while I still have some of this mixed here and wet, let me try to get as many of the little crevices as I can to minimize how much repainting I have to do later. If I have to do a tiny little spot with a color that's not quite a perfect match, that's fine. Blending will cover the sin. You can cover a lot of sins with blending and when you're painting. But still, let's minimize our visible sins. And usually I'm quite happy to let my sins be very visible. Just not in this regard. Rat catchers. Something I haven't really talked about is future characters to come. Their ranks will expand with a full party. But I want to spend some time with Smythe and Youngji first, just to kind of get used to them. Alright, let's look all around, see. Yep, still a few little pieces. With a 3D piece like this, it can be hard to catch all the little angles sometimes. But let's do that. Oh, I did want to follow up on a thread I mentioned the other week, and that was about writing about women's clothing. So it occurred to me that while I talked about how men are bad about writing about women's clothing, I mean, often really bad, I was talking to my daughter about this. I was helping her shop, actually. She wanted a sundress. And she didn't know how to describe what she wanted. So then I described it in terms to make sure we were on the same page of what kind of length, what kind of flaring, what kind of bust coverage, that kind of stuff. And she's like, yeah, all that. She's like, see, you know how to talk about that. And it occurred to me that one of the things we don't talk about is how women can actually be bad at talking about this sometimes. They know it, but they know it because they learn it growing up in culture. They know it like how Rain Man knows how to do advanced math. He doesn't know how he does it, he just does it. And women know fashion that way. They know clothing styling that way. If you want to actually learn about fashion, go to people who talk about fashion regularly. Go to people that went to fashion school. Because a big part of going to school for things, not just fashion, but all kinds of things, is learning about how to talk about it and what language to use. And if you're going to learn about fashion to right women, you need to learn why women use clothing the way they do. Because there are really two major aspects to it. And there are things men do too, but women are more advanced at it. One is functionality. I mean, this should be obvious, but you're going to use clothes to stay cool or be warm or have pockets. Women never have enough pockets on their clothing, trust me. This is why lesbians like cargo shorts. Not because they inherently love cargo shorts, but if they're not expected to uphold to traditional clothing anymore, they just want the goddamn pockets. And frankly, what man can blame them? I mean, there's a reason cargo shorts are popular with men. We want our pockets. Trust me, plenty of straight women want more pockets. Damn near every straight woman, in fact. Yes, there is that woman out there that's like, oh, that will ruin my lines. She's the exception, trust me. At least among women I've dated. The other purpose of clothing is to communicate something. And men do this too. I mean, I tend to be pretty monochrome. I tend to wear black a lot. But I'm communicating something when I do that. I am communicating that I have a very basic presentation, that I don't think about my clothing. Even a negative statement is still a statement. So when I say I don't want to think about clothing, but I want to present myself in a clean, elegant way, that's what I'm saying when I dress all in black. That I have a different message I want to communicate. Steve Jobs was very smart about this. His presentation with that turtleneck sweater that he had hundreds of, or dozens, however many he had, was a very conscious communication with his clothing. If you wear a suit, you're communicating something. Women do this too, of course. They just have a lot more messages. I mean, I've joked that men have just a few classic outfits. The jeans and t-shirt, absolute classic. The full suit, absolute classic. And then, unfortunately, the khakis and polo shirt, which is not a look I rock. It's just, I don't care for that. That's not my style. But that's a choice. To not wear something is a style too. That in situations where other men might wear a polo shirt and khakis, I am not interested in looking preppy. Just not me. Look, I'm the guy that the kid in the grocery store called a Viking. And growing my hair out and having a big beard. These are style choices I make. So men make these choices. Women just have more options and subtlety with them a lot of time, including to what degree do they hold to current trends in fashion. That is a communication. It is not. A lot of people mistakenly believe, oh, they're looking for approval. They're just slavishly following the media. No, they're communicating something, that this is an interest of theirs, that they pay attention to trends, that they're knowledgeable about it. And that says something about their sophistication and place in society. It is a communication tool. And this is one of the big mistakes men take in writing women, that they don't understand these nuances. And all these things that a lot of men think are silly are not silly at all. They are very meaningful in the choices women are making in their life. Now, does this mean that every woman who follows fashion and wears makeup and learns all the tricks has a significant social statement to make? No, absolutely not. There are silly women slavish to convention. But that's actually a message in its own way. Remember, separate the message from the intention. This is a really important thing for a writer. What someone presents externally is very different from why they do it. And you have to think about this. It's true for people in the real world, and it's true for your characters. Well, I think this is pretty good. Definitely want to find a nice stone for this. Something different from this, from the slate. Gonna have to think about how to represent the windows. I don't know. And the straw down here. I have to think. I think I'll do a yellowish color for the straw. Make it a nice bright straw. Okay. Well, I think that's enough stream for today. I am getting peckish. I'm going to go find something to eat. So thank you everyone for joining me, and I will see you again next week. Where's my camera? There we go. Maybe with a better monitor setup.